Welcome to Herbally Yours, an adventure into the world of natural medicine. Here is your host, Dr. Kamhi, the natural nurse who will help you take the leap to ultimate wellness.
Greetings, and thank you for joining me, Kamhi, the natural nurse, for another edition of Herbally Yours, right here on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Listen live, on air, or online at iHeartRadio, Odyssey, TuneIn app, smart speakers, nccradio.org, or download our own WHPC app, anywhere that you get your apps. And podcasts are also available. Herbally Yours brings you the latest information about the many facets in the world of natural living. Today, we are so happy to have as our guest Olivia Chasteen, who is the director of SymptoPro Fertility Education. And that is a sympto-thermal fertility awareness-based method of family planning. Olivia will be telling us about her background and why she decided to pursue natural health education, where she became a certified master herbalist and certified lactation consultant. And then, having been introduced to natural family planning, she decided to put together this wonderful website, which is called symptopro.org. And we'll let Olivia tell us about it. So thank you so much for being our guest today, Olivia.
Thank you, Ellen. I'm happy to be here.
So let's go back in time. When you were growing up, is this something you thought that you would be doing, or did life just move you along in that direction?
Yeah, it's definitely more something that life moved me in this direction. I didn't really grow up with a natural health mindset, but I experienced a number of health struggles that kind of pushed me towards the natural health world. And then working to make everything in your life naturally oriented, and then thinking about how you want to handle your fertility, there's a disconnect. Instead of turning to the conventional methods, I wanted something that was natural there as well.
And so through research and development, you put together something called SymptoPro, and that's symptopro.org. And, listeners, you can always check out our archives where we have very simple links to get in touch with any of our hundreds and hundreds of guests that we have posted on our archives. So what kind of education did you have in order to put together SymptoPro?
So SymptoPro was actually developed in the late 70s. So I would love to be able to take credit for having developed SymptoPro, but I didn't. I am now the director of the organization, but SymptoPro was developed in the late 70s based off of the research of Dr. Joseph Retzer. And he was a doctor from Austria who worked directly with couples and taught them how to use the method, and was able to look at all of these charts from all of these women to be able to establish what these rules are around when the fertile window opens for these women and when it closes. And then in Oregon, Portland, Oregon, Rose Fuller was the woman who kind of took his research from Austria and made the version in English in the United States here called SymptoPro, but it was based directly on his research. And then now today I am leading the part of what was once called Northwest Family Services as SymptoPro.
Okay, so that's the background. Now, what kind of life experiences did you have that led you to be so involved with this method to the point of where you're now the director of the whole organization?
Right. So like I mentioned, when I was younger, I had a number of health struggles, and I had really horrible digestion and wasn't able to get answers from doctors. I also had very irregular cycles when I was younger, and you go to a doctor as a teenager with irregular cycles, they're going to tell you, we're going to fix this by putting you on birth control.
Birth control pills. That would definitely be it. You're right.
And that didn't work. I was put on birth control pills for 6 months as a teenager to regulate my cycles. And it worked when I was on the pills for those 6 months. But as soon as those 6 months was up and I stopped taking them, I did not cycle again for at least a year. And then when the cycles did came back, they continued to be very irregular. So this was something that allowed me to understand what was going on in my body more.
Yeah, because it does work. It definitely does help to moderate and modify and regulate cycles. But what you were looking for is something to balance your own body. And that is not something that was helpful in.
Right. Absolutely. Also,
you discussed that you are educated in herbal medicine. Where did you study that?
So right around the time that my firstborn, after he was born and being plunged into motherhood, I knew of certain things that I didn't want to have to take him to the doctor. And, I was concerned about the overuse of antibiotics for all of these things. And I just really wanted to be able to protect his health in a way that I didn't feel like going the conventional route would offer for him. So, but I need, as a new mom, I don't want to sit there and watch my kids suffer either. So I wanted to find ways to help support his health so that he could be the healthiest that he could possibly be. And I actually listened to, there was a series on herbalism right around the time he was born. And I believe you were a speaker in that series. It was all about herbalism. And I listened to that and was like, something clicked. This is what I need to do. And I ended up taking the Master Herbalist Certification course through the School of Natural Healing, which was started by Dr. John Christopher.
Oh, and I knew Dr. Christopher. I studied with him directly. Yeah. And then his son, David, took over when Dr. Christopher stepped down from that organization. So that's very good. You may want to, I'll just throw out to suggest to you and anyone else who's interested in herbal medicine, I do have a class called the Natural Nurse Herbal Certification course. And that course actually offers 18 CEUs for any health professional, but it's open to anyone, whether you're a health professional or not. And of course, a highly recognized certificate is an RH, which is a registered herbalist. And that's something you may want to add, to your knowledge base at some point, because RHs are really well recognized as highly trained, qualified herbalists as well. So everything you've done so far would just walk yourself right through to that if that's something you're interested in. Well, yeah, I think you must have been talking about Remedy. Might have been the Remedy series, because many, many people saw that one as well. Although I've been on certainly lots and lots of those series about herbal medicine. I think that's really interesting that you took that forward and made a beautiful business that helps educate others who might be interested in, would you call this natural family planning, basically?
Yes. So the naming has kind of changed over time. Whereas historically it's been known as natural family planning. Now it tends to be known more as fertility awareness-based methods. And I think that the idea behind that is to just open that field up to try to get more people interested in learning about it instead of just, that's natural family planning, something that I've already learned about and didn't really understand. This is something that, who wouldn't want to be aware of their fertility. And of course, a deep dive into this information, which people can see at your website at symptopro.org. And you have so many wonderful references like downloadable charts. Why would somebody want some of these charts? So the charts, they can go there and download them. And then that's where they can chart their fertile symptoms. So if they take a course of instruction with us, they're going to know exactly how to fill out that chart. And then they can have that right in front of them. They can see what's going on with their cycle. They can evaluate potential issues that they might be dealing with to see certain types of hormone imbalance. Typically, just by looking at their chart, they can see if something is going on. Yeah, it's amazing. Everybody should sort of be taught this, I think, in, basic health ed, because it gives you so much more control over your own body and your own cycles. And it's not only about pregnancy or not getting pregnant. Like having this knowledge, it gives you a lot of control about when you would want to conceive if you do, or also when you're less likely to conceive if you don't want to, and also other
related health issues. For instance, a lot of people I know, women in particular, not to be sexist, but they're the ones with menstrual cycles for the most part, get headaches at a certain time of their month all the time. With me, it was like 3 days before it started. That's all gone now that I'm old. It's great. It's great. But having had that information is so useful because I did use a similar system at that time, and I would know literally not to book a really big, important lecture like at that date. So having that information is so useful on many, many levels.
Right. Absolutely. And actually the headaches right before a period are actually very common because so usually it has to do with how quickly your hormone levels are changing. People will experience headaches. So when estrogen levels suddenly drop, women might get headaches. Or when progesterone levels suddenly drop, women might get headaches. But being able to look at your chart, you can see where you are and when to come to expect certain things. And, you might want to get out some of your natural remedies because you know what's coming ahead for you and how to best support your body for where you are in your cycle.
So I wonder if there's anything similar for men, because men do also have cycles, but it's not, that obvious and regulated, but it actually are linked as well.
Yeah, that I am not as familiar with. I know that we do very much focus on the women's cycle, and we try our best to, especially for couples, to get the men involved in, so much relies on the women for observing their fertile signs and maybe taking their temperature in the morning. But if they can rely on their partner to do the charting for them, then it becomes more of a conversation and more of a couple thing. Since fertility only happens as a couple anyways, we do try to get women to have their couple or their partner be involved in the process of learning. But as for the fertile cycles within men, that I am not as familiar with.
Let's think about that. But I do want to tell you listeners that you are listening to Herbally Yours on Voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. And we love to hear from you as well. We'd like you to know that you're listening to Herbally Yours today with your host, Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse. And today our guest is Olivia Chasteen, and she is the director of SymptoPro Fertility Education, a sympto-thermal fertility awareness-based method. So you can see more by going to her website, which is at symptopro.org, which is a beautiful laid out website and very, very easy to navigate with lots of, free information and downloadable information. It's really well put together, Olivia.
Thank you. We tried our best to make it as easy as possible for women coming in to learn this.
What are some of the risks and potential side effects of conventional contraception, drug-based and otherwise?
Yes, that's a good one. Like I mentioned, I had taken birth control pills for 6 months when I was a teenager, and then I didn't get a cycle again for at least a year after that. But birth control pills are one of the most commonly used forms of contraception, and there are a lot of side effects that can come with those. These pills have been linked to depression, decreased glucose tolerance. So, that would predispose someone to get diabetes. Weight gain is another one. They also increase your risk of certain types of cancers, including breast cancer, which is one of the more prevalent cancers in Western society. There's also an increased risk of blood clots for IUDs or the intrauterine devices. Those are also fairly common. And side effects for those include, severe menstrual cramps, pelvic inflammatory disease, anemia. It can increase your chance of having an ectopic pregnancy, which could be life-threatening for the mother. And they can also cause perforation of the uterus and infertility. Now, condoms are, fairly common, but while the risks mainly lie in the possible allergic reactions, they just aren't very effective. Most people might not realize that, but male condoms are only about 87% effective. And when you take into consideration that a woman is only fertile for a very short window of her entire cycle, and those effectiveness statistics of 87% are coming from using condoms during a full cycle, including on days when the woman's not even fertile. I like to argue that they're actually less effective if you would measure them on only days when a woman is possibly fertile.
Yeah, people might not realize that. There's actually, especially those people who want to conceive, find that sometimes that's frustrating because there is really a pretty small window of opportunity for that to happen.
Right, yes. And for couples who are struggling to conceive, using something like a sympto-thermal based method can help you identify when your fertile window is, so that you can concentrate on trying to conceive on those specific days versus on days on either side of that, maybe after ovulation when it would no longer be possible to get pregnant.
So what about, there are many women who don't have regular cycles to begin with. So how well would this method work for them?
Right. So for using a sympto-thermal method, you would not have to have regular cycles. This is not something like the rhythm method where you have to have 28-day cycles in order to use it. So with irregular cycles, women can actually learn quite a lot about what's happening in their cycle, and they can often come to really appreciate that they get a very accurate way of knowing when to expect their period to show up. So if they see the signs for entering the post-ovulatory phase of their cycle, they can know, even if they have very widely range of cycle lengths, they can know, I'm going to expect my period in about 2 weeks. And that can be very reassuring for someone who has those irregular cycles. And there is a lot of research, the research from Dr. Retzer and other researchers as well, that helped us develop rules so that we can apply those rules for women with irregular cycles, women who are breastfeeding, women who are near menopause, and they can continue to chart and still have those good effectiveness rates that mirror all of the other rules within the method.
So it has to do a lot with learning about yourself. That's a big part of this, instead of sort of thinking about, well, the doctor's going to take care of it. And these things are not something that anyone can do but yourself. And it's super easy. I mean, the list of activities that you have about what people can do, along with the charts, and you have some really excellent articles, which are all free, and you can link to them. They're called articles of interest. And right at the top, you have that it's not about not going to your own doctor, but it's about self-education, something like the 4 types of PCOS, which is something that often interferes with fertility and has other symptoms as well, also known as polycystic ovary syndrome. So it's really a great service that you have by putting all this together.
Thank you. Yes. And for those women who have those, issues like polycystic ovarian syndrome or have irregular cycles, you really do learn a lot about what's going on in your body. When you can sit down and see something right in front of you, and you can go back and look at your previous charts and see how things have changed over time, you really do get to see this bigger picture of what's really starting to become known as the 5th vital sign of health, the menstrual cycle.
I never heard that term before. That's why I love doing radio. We've been doing this radio show since 1990 every week, but I never heard that before. That's called what, did you say?
The 5th vital sign of health is the menstrual cycle. There are actually some doctors who are starting to understand that and to learn about things like these fertility awareness-based methods so that they can look at a woman's chart and help her when she's experiencing troubles.
So I never heard it called that, though. But that's interesting because, of course, that doesn't pertain to, let's say, older people like myself, who those days are long gone, 20 years or 25 years since I've had any of that going on, and all men. So it's interesting that would actually be called such a big part of health. So certainly for young women, I can see that. Now, what does the process of learning SymptoPro, what would that be like?
For learning SymptoPro, there are 3 different ways to learn. You could either take a live course in person with an instructor. You could take a live course virtually through something like Zoom, or you could take an online video version of a course directly online. It's all on demand. Now, the good thing about any of those options is that you are paired with a real live instructor. So you can ask as many questions as you might need. You can get help with chart reviews along the way. And there are 3 classes and bookwork to complete with each of those classes. And you take the classes at least 2 weeks apart. So 3 classes, at least 2 weeks apart. There are sample activities in the classes, so you get practice applying the rules. And then your instructor is going to work with you individually to make sure that everything's going well with your charting. So they're going to help you with any questions you might have, and then they can look over your charts as you started charting to make sure that you fully understand the material and that you're applying the rules properly. But the thing is, even after those 3 classes, you can still connect with your instructor if you need a chart review, or if you have questions, or if you are looking at a chart and it looks funny and you aren't quite sure how to apply a rule. That's the great thing about taking a course with a real person, is that you can get real help from them even beyond the course.
And it's like one-on-one, and it's, not a big, very, very expensive investment, but it can give you a lot of control about what's going on with your fertility, either as a single person or as a couple.
Absolutely. And this is really an investment in yourself. So if you learn something like a fertility awareness-based method, one, you aren't putting money into any type of contraceptions, because really all you need is, a lot of women will chart on an app. So then you would need an app to do it. Otherwise, you can use paper charts. That's possible to do. And you would need a thermometer. And that's all you need. And there's so much that opens up in terms of understanding your health and being able to see what your fertility looks like. And even the benefits of having that open communication line with your partner and making it something that you do have to discuss on a regular basis.
Well, you yourself wrote articles about apps. Me personally, I'm not even quite sure what an app is. I'm sorry. But tell us about those apps. Like, it seems from your article like you think they might be useful, but maybe just learning this method would be better.
Right. So, and like I said, a lot of women do like to chart using apps, and that's wonderful. They can be a really great tool to use. There are really great apps out there to do that with, but there can also be drawbacks too, and that's important to be aware of them. So for using apps, the problem is if you are giving away any of your responsibility. So if the app is determining for you when your fertile cycles are, if they are determining when you're fertile and when you're not fertile, and then the app is prompting you, telling you that that's what your information is, that can be very problematic. Because to take a course and learn how to chart your fertility, there's a lot that goes into that. And then you can look at your chart and you can make the interpretation and understand what's going on in your cycle to be able to make those interpretations. An app, the thing with an app is app developers are not usually very keen on giving away their algorithms, the information behind their algorithms. So if you have an app that's telling you when you're fertile and when you're not, well, is that algorithm just based on the average of women having 28-day cycles? Because then it's going to always tell you that you ovulate around day 14, and it's going to base your fertile window off of that. But if you don't have regular cycles, or you do have regular cycles, but they're not 28-day cycles, because most women don't actually have 28-day cycles unless they're, on the pill or something like that. And, so that app would essentially be nothing more than the rhythm method, which in my mind is outdated and not very effective. And then if you are using an app that maybe does take into consideration basal body temperature, and it's charting your temperature, but you forgot to mark a temperature as disturbed, or you didn't even realize that the temperature that you took may have possibly been disturbed. How is the app going to interpret that? How is the app going to change what is really your fertile window? And it's just really, you're giving away your power, and you're giving it to an app without fully understanding what's going on. So apps, like I said, they can be wonderful. And I myself do chart on an app, but I don't chart on an app that takes away my power and tells me when I'm fertile or not. I get to make those interpretations, and I get to make that choice myself.
So if people take the symptopro.org, go to symptopro.org to see all these charts that Olivia is sharing on there, all the articles that she's sharing on there. Look at how you go about having this fertility awareness-based method. And of course, once you're gathering that information, if there was an issue and you had that information about your temperature and your cycles, if you took that to a gynecologist or a physician, it's going to mean a lot to them also in terms of to try to help to see what's going on with you if there is something amiss.
And thankfully, there are a lot more doctors who are starting to understand that. And as more women are turning to fertility awareness-based methods and they're sharing that information with their doctors, more doctors really are coming to want to learn about what's going on. What is this fertility awareness-based method? What is that all about? And how can I be as educated as my patients are, really? Because these women who come in with their charts, they can tell you a lot about what's going on, and the doctor has to be able to understand all of that. So there's actually a really great organization called Facts About Fertility, and they were started by the organization was started by a physician, and this physician has gotten an electives course put together with information about all these various methods of charting, and even has a course that counts for continuing education credits. So for women whose doctors don't understand their charts, send them to Facts and go find a different doctor who can read your charts.
Well, thank you so much for being our guest today. And we've been speaking to Olivia Chasteen from symptopro.org. Thank you, Olivia.
Thank you very much, Ellen. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. And thank you, too, listeners, for tuning in once again to Herbally Yours, produced in the studios of 90.3 WHPC, Nassau Community College, Garden City, New York. For further information, email us at whpc@ncc.edu. This is your host, Ellen Kamhi, at naturalnurse.com, inviting you to join us next week for another edition of Herbally Yours. Until then, stay healthy.